let's get into this. We got topic number 1. This is gifted versus Penn. We got 1990 Michael Jordan versus 2013 LeBron James. Who is the better two-way player? Gifted, we're going to start round 1, topic 1 with you. And your time will start when you do.
This argument is not about who the greatest of all time is. It's not about all the seasons. It's about 2013 LeBron versus Michael Jordan 1990 through 91. And in terms of two-way player, this isn't about all of the stats. This is about, as an all-around player, who was a better player. And the answer to that is LeBron James. In the 2013 season, LeBron averaged 26, 8, and 7.3 assists per game on 64% true shooting. That was one of his most efficient seasons ever. He was the best skip passer in the NBA. His playmaking was also one of the best playmaking seasons ever. And more than often, he was dominating his matchup on a night-to-night basis, where he was able to dominate in the playoffs as well. When you look at LeBron James and you look at Michael Jordan, they're looked at to have two of the best peaks of all time. But ultimately, in these two seasons, what LeBron James was doing to the league was absolutely ridiculous and insane. He was able to do many things offensively that we haven't seen. And again, two-way player. So it's not just the offense, it's the defense. In terms of both ends of the ball, Michael Jordan did not clear LeBron on offense, but I can certainly say LeBron James was a much better defender than Michael Jordan in terms of his versatility as a defender, being able to go from guarding Tony Parker to Tim Duncan. That's how good LeBron James was on both sides of the ball. So LeBron is the better two-way player. I'll continue to make more arguments as we transition to the second round. I'm curious what Penn has to say.
Penn, talk to me about MJ.
Okay. You know what? I'm gonna take a page out of Michael Jordan's book, and I'm gonna give you my entire playbook before I start. That's what Michael Jordan would do. He would say, "I'm gonna go left. I'm gonna spin right. I dare you to stop me." So I'm gonna start with the regular season. I'm gonna go to the playoffs, and then I'm gonna give you a little lesson on fear versus reverence. So let's talk about that regular season production that you were referencing, right? Well, we're not talking about careers, as you mentioned, right? 10-time scoring champion, 9-time all defense, 5-time MVP, 6-time finals MVP. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about the 6 championships. We're not talking about the 6 times finals MVP. We're not talking about no game 7s. We're not talking about all that. But let's talk about 1990, 1991 Michael Jordan versus 12-13 LeBron. Both won championships. Both first team all defense, first team all league. Both won finals MVP. But the edge goes to Jordan. He did much more with less. He had the tougher conference. 1990, 1991 East was loaded, okay? The 12-13 East was not. I dare you to name the third best team in the East without crying. Michael Jordan had higher impact metrics. And believe me, it gets much worse for you when we go to the playoffs. 12 box plus minus versus 11.7, 10.8 value of replacement versus 9.9, 2.7 steals versus 1.7 steals, and that 26.8 points you referenced, Jordan had 31.5. 20.3 win shares versus 19.3. Jordan clears.
Gifted, round 2. You're muted, but not in the... Yeah.
Notice how Penn did not respond to the question of better two-way player. Instead, he went on a soliloquy talking about a lot of other things. Let's get to the point. Who's the better two-way player in terms of defense and offense? If someone wants to say Michael Jordan was a better offensive player, maybe, right? But defensively, he was not better than LeBron James. Offensively, LeBron James shot a career high at the time, 77% on shots from 0 to 3 feet. He was one of the most dynamic players in the NBA. He was unstoppable in transition. And keep in mind, this is after he learned how to develop his post game from Hakeem Olajuwon. So the way defenses loaded up on him, they couldn't do it the same because he had more of a variety built in to his scoring. And you mentioned his scoring overall and his numbers. LeBron James had to play with Dwayne Wade. So there was a co-star thing going on where LeBron James had to be off the ball a bit to better complement Dwayne Wade because both of those players were better with the ball in their hands. But make no mistake about it, with LeBron having the ball in his hands, he produced a very, very efficient offense all the way through and through. In the playoffs, he averaged 33.8 points per 75 on plus 7.8 real true shooting. That is what LeBron James is able to do. And again, defensively, Jordan did not have the versatility to guard different positions like LeBron did. Jordan could not play small ball center for the Miami Heat. LeBron James could. LeBron James is specifically the better two-way player than Michael Jordan. That is the debate. Let's bring it forward to that conversation. He is better.
Penn, round 2 on you.
Now, this is what happens when you rehearse your debate points in front of the mirror instead of actually talking about who you're talking to, right? Because you said I didn't talk about defense. I believe I mentioned steals. I believe I mentioned value replacement. I mentioned box plus minus. Everything there was talking about defense. But you want to talk about defense because that's the conversation you want to have about versatility. I'll get to dominance on defense when we talk about the next point. But let's talk about playoffs because that's what it's about, right? We're talking about the best of the best going up against the best because that's the playoffs. We're not talking about what you did against the Bobcats. We're not talking about what you did against the Hornets. We're talking about what you did in the finals, what you did against the better teams in the league. And that's why the playoffs exposed the frauds. Did Michael Jordan get exposed in the playoffs? No, he did not. The numbers tilted in Jordan's favor in the regular season, but in the playoffs, that 12 box plus minus went to 14.6. What about LeBron? Oh, he dipped. He went from 11.7 to 10.4. That paltry 25% assist percentage that Jordan had during the regular season, the whole advantage that people say, oh, LeBron's a much better playmaker. I get that. I get that LeBron's a better passer, but by how much? What's the measure? How much? Because Jordan's assist percentage went to 36.7% in the playoffs. That's higher than LeBron. Okay. True shooting percentage. LeBron fell to 58.5. Jordan rose to 60. Okay. And swept by the Knicks. Swept by the Knicks in the finals. 4-1 against the Sixers. Jordan had a championship in less games than any player in league history except for one.
Whoa, you got to cut that man mic, JD.
My bad. He was finishing his point. You can finish your point too if you go over by 2 seconds. I got you.
Okay, cool. So I find it funny because once again, Penn did not counter if Jordan was better on defense than LeBron. And let's talk about that, right? Defensively, Jordan was not the best defensive player on his team. That was Scottie. They were a 1A, 1B type of situation defensively. LeBron James was asked to do a lot on both ends of the ball for his team. And specifically, when it came down to that Lakers overall series, right? When MJ was in foul trouble and they had to have Scottie Pippen come in and guard Magic, the size and the versatility that Scottie Pippen had elevated him to be a better defender than Michael Jordan was. LeBron James, ironically, would be a perfect matchup for Magic in terms of being an off-ball guy and also being able to protect the paint. And once again, LeBron James with Wade off the floor propelled the Heat to a 17.7 offensive rating in his minutes. That will rank amongst the best of all time. LeBron James clears him in terms of his defense. You just admitted in your own round while you were yapping that he was a better playmaker. And in terms of scoring, LeBron James had one of the most dominant scoring seasons ever where he literally shot 80% of his shots were twos, and he shot 60% on twos. He was better in this individual overall season in terms of being a two-way player, offense and defense. You're not going to argue that Michael Jordan was a better defensive player. What you're going to bring up is accolades and all this stuff. How about LeBron James almost being Defensive Player of the Year, but because Marc Gasol won it over him, which everyone knows was BS, he was not able to do that, despite the fact that Marc Gasol did not make a first team. LeBron was better on both ends of the ball that year.
Penn, take us home.
I know that you want me to keep talking about defense, but between the two of these players, only one of them has actually won a Defensive Player of the Year. You're talking about Michael Jordan like he's not a great defender because he's a slightly worse defender than Scottie Pippen. I think that was always debatable between those two. Scottie had a much lower load on offense. He did less for the Bulls. You're laughing, but it doesn't really matter because you don't know what you're talking about. Go back and actually watch Michael Jordan. I know it was a little bit before your time, son, but you got to watch Michael Jordan to talk about Michael Jordan this way. The way you're talking about him, it sounds like you're talking about Nikola Jokic defensively. This was a very impressive defender. Now, you want to talk about getting exposed against the greatest player of all time in the post against Magic Johnson. No one's stopping Magic Johnson in the post. It's not like LeBron was the lockdown defender that you're describing him to be. LeBron's versatility defensively is the same argument that people make for Jason Tatum versatility defensively. Yeah, you're versatile because you're 6'8" and you can do a lot of stuff on the court. But let's talk about fear versus reverence. What is defense? It's deterrence, right? When Victor Wembanyama or Hakeem Olajuwon swat your shot, you're thinking about them. Michael Jordan, you had to think about this guy as a defender. He was a dominant defensive playmaker. Michael Jordan's defense was a reason for offensive players to choke. This was a reason for offensive players to not try things because he was a disruptive, sometimes gambly defender that absolutely put the fear of God in his opponents.
Run the polls, son. That was round one, or that was topic one. Gifted versus Penn. Make sure you are voting again, chat. This is not a biased vote. You're voting on the better debate. Who brought you the better points? Who debated better? This is not MJ versus LeBron. This is Gifted versus Penn. Topic number 2. What is the most important advanced analytic to determine a player's impact in value? Wow. Really getting into the nerd side of hoops, huh? All right. Penn, Gifted started last round. You start for this topic. On you.
Okay, perfect. So when we're talking about value over replacement, right, we are talking about a number that is a catch-all metric, right? When we talk about things like steal percentage, block percentage, et cetera, we're talking about the building blocks of what is ultimately what we're trying to answer in the barbershop debate is my player better than your player? Is LeBron better than Jordan, or is Jordan better than LeBron? And we want catch-all statistics. Now, for a long time, people use points per game, rebounds per game, blocks per game, et cetera. But then when advanced stats came along, we started to get value replacement. The reason I really like value replacement, or VORP, or why some people call me the VORP guy, is because it is one of the best predictors, if not the best predictor, of who's going to be MVP. And by the way, this goes back to before VORP was even invented. So it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, that guy leads in VORP, so he wins. It's actually, you can go back and figure it out. Oh, Michael Jordan led the league in 1991 in VORP, and he happened to be the best player in the league. The reason the value replacement is such a great metric is because it also measures ability and availability. And I've always believed that availability is the best ability. If a guy can go out and be dominant, I'm talking dominant motor, dominant production, dominant efficiency for 40 minutes every single night, he's giving you more value than the guy who can do 22 minutes, 25 minutes. There's a lot of guys who can be great for 10 minutes a game, but when they start getting 25, 30 minutes down, that's when they start to fade. So the superstars, the best players in the league, they're the ones who do it consistently for the longest period of time.
The mighty Vorpin Power Rangers. Gifted, on you.
Yeah, I find this funny. We know Penn is the VORP man. Let's shit all over VORP, right? So VORP is a cumulative stat that is heavily reliant on the box score. VORP is a season stat, so it's not tracked per game. It's based off of this season. And I find this funny because in an actual Player's Choice episode that me and Penn had, Penn was trying to downplay Cade Cunningham because Cade was a negative VORP player for the 2021 draft class. He mentioned how he was behind Josh Giddey, Santi Aldama, and Quentin Grimes. He made sure to hammer home the Quentin Grimes point about VORP. Yet we all know Cade Cunningham is a better player than all of those players. VORP is a very shitty stat. And another reason why VORP is not a great stat, do you know who the all-time leaders in VORP are? LeBron, because he has more seasons played, Michael Jordan, and then John Stockton. Now, if you want to say John Stockton is your third best player of all time, you got it. I would disagree. My stat that I look at is true shooting, because let's be honest, all advanced stats do not tell you the story. They do not. But true shooting does a good job at painting the full picture of scoring efficiency, at providing context to three-point shooters who people might have felt were not efficient because they might have shot 40% from the field. But we know taking more threes means you're taking better shots worth more points. We use true shooting all the time. People understand the context behind what true shooting is attempting to do. I don't know what the formula for VORP is. I can't sit here and tell you what all of the numbers are, but we use true shooting to highlight players in different ways, and it's more accessible. VORP is based on games played, minutes played, season played.
Pay attention, chat. They are cooking, I think. Go ahead, Penn.
So let me translate what you just said. I'm too stupid to figure out what VORP is, so it doesn't make sense to me. Lord help me, man. Now, I'm so happy you brought up the reliability of the stats, so I don't have to. Okay. Let's talk about who led the league last year in value over replacement. Jokic, he's pretty damn good. Doncic, Giannis, Shea, Sabonis, Brunson, LeBron, Halliburton, Anthony Davis, Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid. Those are the leaders in VORP, ranked from 1st to 10th. Who led the league in true shooting percentage, bro? Daniel Gafford, Grayson Allen, Obi Toppin, Mo Wagner, and Rudy Gobert. You have an offensive stat. True shooting percentage is a purely offensive stat that Rudy Gobert is top 5 in. I want y'all to think about that, chat. Think about that real hard. You got this yapper, this professional yapper up here, this disrespectful motherfucker trying to tell you that this is the stat of stats. This is the stat. Bro, this guy could have picked EPM. He could have picked effective field goal percentage. When he picked true shooting percentage, I'm like, wow, I thought he was dumb. I didn't know he was this dumb. You're talking about true shooting percentage. You're talking about a stat, an offensive stat that Rudy Gobert is top 5 in the NBA. And by the way, just in case you think I'm cherry picking this season, 1991, these are the guys who led the league in true shooting percentage. Buck Williams, Brad Doherty, Otis Thorpe, Horace Grant, Reggie Miller. VORP, Jordan, Stockton, Drexler.
Gifted, on you.
I'm so happy he brought up who won the MVP and how he's trying to tie VORP to MVP. I find it funny because you call yourself a Nikola Jokic fan, but if you understood what VORP was really doing, VORP is about the replacement player. It's a comparison to what a player produces to a replacement player. Let's think about the Denver Nuggets when DeMarcus Cousins in the modern era was their backup big and how bad those lineups were. A big part of why Jokic cleared everyone else in the league in VORP is because obviously Jokic being the main big for his team, playing the amount of games that he did, is going to have a higher value because his other lineups are ass. If you watch basketball, you would know that. So because of that, his VORP is higher. Well, like I said, every stat is not great at determining one thing. Every stat has their flaws. But with true shooting, what we understand is true shooting is a better version than field goal percentage. What often happens, bigs are in the paint a lot. They have easier shots in twos. Sometimes they have more limited shots. And because of that, their field goal percentage is going to be higher. True shooting makes it a fairer fight because it includes 3-point shots, it includes free throws, and it gives you a lot more context. I'll give you a prime example. A player like Chauncey Billups was looked at to be not effective for the Detroit Pistons because his shooting percentage was under league average. However, almost half of his shots were from 3. So really, he was efficient. And that story would not be able to be painted without true shooting. Instead of you talking about Jokic with his high VORP, with the shitty lineups being the reason why it's so high.
Pen, round 3. I'll unmute you. You got it.
That's the dumbest thing I think I've ever heard. And I'm not even capping when I say that. Everything you just said was wrong. Bro, you had a week to research what value replacement was, and you could come up with that. A replacement player is not who replaces you. It is what is termed as the league average replacement player. It's not because DeMarcus Cousins is bad, so Jokic is good. You're just talking raw plus minus. Box plus minus, as it contextualizes to VORP, is something completely different. And I would run out of my timer 6 times trying to explain it all to you. But here are some coefficients that go into value replacement. Free throw attempt, field goal attempts, personal fouls, blocks, steals, rebounds, offensive and defensive, turnovers, assists, 3-pointers made, and points generated. Basically, value replacement attempts to measure how good you are as a basketball player, offensively and defensively, and how good your team is. But what it does better than plus minus in general is it contextualizes your role on offense. It takes a lot. It is a very smart stat. It is a reason why intelligent people, like people who, actually go around the league and determine whether a player is good or bad, that's why they determine that. Now, the reason that you mentioned Cade as I'm an idiot because of Quentin Grimes. Quentin Grimes is not a better player than Cade Cunningham. Quentin Grimes is better at his role than Cade Cunningham is at his role. That is what VORP attempts to measure. It is how optimized you are for your role. Okay. Honestly, I need 6 timers to go through everything you got wrong in the last one. Chat, if you vote for this, you are voting for like the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Wow.
Gifted, take us home.
Yeah, that's fine. I mentioned Cade Cunningham because mentioning Vort for a player like Kate Cunningham does not properly contextualize everything. You're mentioning Kate Cunningham when, again, because of his injuries overall and not playing that much, that's why those players like Trey Murphy and those other players had a higher VORP than Kate Cunningham. The replacement player overall is mentioning in a vacuum what that will be compared to Nikola Jokic, who, because he's the primary big for his team and is filling up the box score in those metrics, he's going to warp and lap a lot of players in VORP. You can't use VORP on a day-to-day basis to compare players. The reason why I use true shooting is at the very least, true shooting is a metric that you can use on a game-to-game basis. It's not based off seasons. It's not based off games played. It's simply about what a player shot and how a player shot. With every stat, you need context to understand how to use it properly. And true shooting has been the golden standard for comparing efficiency between players. For you, on the other hand, you would like to use VORP to paint a picture about Kate. How I know that? Because in the conversation we had, you were mentioning VORP and mentioning players like, oh, wow, Kate's not over him. Yeah, because he missed a lot of time. VORP is so skewed by the amount of games that you play, and that highly impacts the validity of the stat. Where if you're going season by season, game by game, stretch by stretch, you can't use VORP in that way. You would have to go over a body of work after the season is completed. True shooting is more accessible because of that, and that's why I would much rather use that to gauge impact compared to that.
Gifted with time left. All right, run the polls. W basketball, I guess. I don't know. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know what was going on. Do not explain it to me because the chat has to vote. Topic 3.
Thank you, chat. Appreciate it.
To close out the day, the regular season of the PCL, and we got a good one. Jokic versus Hakeem. Who would you choose to build your team around? Gifted, I believe that this last debate, it's on you to start. So kick us off. The time starts when you do.
No problem. So earlier I was told to eat my crackers. I just want Penn to know I went to Whole Foods and I got my crackers and I will be eating them while you yap and glaze Jokic. So let's get to some things, right? Penn, his definition of greatness is elevation, space, how much space you create on offense, defense, being consistent, showing up in high pressure moments, how you influence the game. Ironically, in this debate, Hakeem fits a lot of that criteria. When you think about the top 10 that Penn gave, MJ, Bill Russell, LeBron, Tim Duncan, Magic, Kareem, Bird, Curry, Shaq, then one of Dirk, Arvydas Sabonis, KG, or Wilt. Hakeem fits that really well, considering the fact that guard players went to Hakeem for their bag moves, right? LeBron, in his best overall season of player, went to Hakeem to get the sauce from Hakeem because he was that talented of a player. The answer in terms of who I'm building a championship team around compared to Jokic and Hakeem, as good as Jokic is, Hakeem is way more well-rounded than Nikola Jokic. And winning a championship is all about margins. Sometimes you don't get to draft players who can have 60-point games every now and then, right? Sometimes you have to win off the margins. And for Hakeem Olajuwon to win back-to-back titles, playing against some of the hardest competition in the league, coming back from down 3-1 in the playoffs and going on to win the title on top of that, beating the number 1 ranked seed, Hakeem has fit a lot of those criteria way more than Jokic. So I'm going with Hakeem Olajuwon.
Time to spare. Penn, on you.
Okay. Can we mute? Can we mute the crackers? All right, perfect. Thanks. All right. I'm gonna start this conversation. I could start it out one of 3 ways, right? I'm gonna start it out with portability and just how you fit into different lineups, right? I think that a great part of how you play with different players comes down to portability across generations, right? Obviously, Michael Jordan didn't play in the same era as Nikola Jokic. Jokic didn't play in the same era as Hakeem Olajuwon. But when we're talking about portability, we are talking about space generation, which Gifted alluded to, right? I talked about how you generate space. Well, space is created through passing and shooting. That's 2 of the biggest ways that you can create space. If you can hit, full quarter dimes, like with precision accuracy, you're expanding the space on the court. When you can hit threes like Steph Curry, you're expanding space on the court. Well, I want you to ask yourself, who helps their teammates more? That's really the question, right? Does Hakeem help his teammate more on defense, or does Jokic help their team more on offense? And I'm going to argue that obviously Nikola Jokic is the better player. I'm not arguing that Hakeem is not a great player. I love Hakeem Olajuwon. He's one of the most skilled, most interesting players as an individual. But this is a team sport, and it does matter how much better you make your team. When we talk about porting across generations, could Hakeem play in today's game? with his lack of shooting, with his lack of three-point shooting, with his lack of awareness of how to move without the basketball, would he be as dominant today? Would Jokic be as dominant in the 80s? So when we talk about portability across generations, across different lineups, could they play with a dominant second, a star advantage? Jokic.
Gifted. Back to you. I'll unmute you on this side. You should be good.
So Penn talked about space creating on offense, but again, this is not about who's more impactful, either defensively or offensively. It's all of it. And on defense, it's not close at all. At all. Hakeem is one of the only players in NBA history, y'all, to be top 5 in offense and defense in a season at a time in the NBA. Because Hakeem was a great individual scorer, he could pass, he could show on defense on the perimeter. He was one of the best shot blockers of all time with his timing. He had unstoppable moves. The Dream Shake set up a lot of great scores at the basket, a lot of kicked out opportunities. His teams religiously were high in terms of 3-point shooters, despite the lack of talent. They only averaged like 8 threes. If you put him in today's era with better shooters and the fact that he's not a black hole on defense that is going to stand there and kick the ball to reset possessions, Hakeem would be absolutely dominant with even more space. And once again, he never had a co-star that could, at the very least, shot create from all 3 levels at a high level, shoot threes the same way that Jamal Murray could. And at the end of the day, when you're constructing a championship roster, it is all about the margins. Greatness, according to Penn, is about the space you create on offense and defense. When you're combining the two and not separating them, it is clear that Hakeem is the better player. And in the playoffs, we saw him do it against much better competition back to back. The tier of greatness to do it back to back, few players have accomplished that. Hakeem has.
Penn, round 2. Your time starts when you do.
I think you did. I thought you didn't understand advanced statistics. Now I realize you don't understand basketball, period. You don't think that Hakeem Olajuwon had a teammate who could score on all 3 levels? You must not have heard of Clyde the Glide Drexler when he was 32 years old. He was incredible. Okay, so I know that you talked about Jokic. And again, it's so crazy how you misrepresent these players and you make them into basically caricatures, but that's probably true because you are a caricature yourself. Jokic has almost made up the gap in value replacement despite playing half the games. Okay. And that isn't because he's a non-scorer or just he's a one-dimensional, one-trick pony who just passes the ball and resets the way you think he is. His current 9.9 box plus minus is on level with LeBron, with Jordan, but Hakeem's 4.6 is much closer to Dwayne Wade and Kobe Bryant. Jokic is the more efficient at literally everything. He's 15% better from 3. He's 9% better from 2. He's a better post player. I know you don't want to hear that because Hakeem hit those dazzling post moves. And maybe it looked better when Hakeem did it because he took a lot of hard ones. But it doesn't mean that he was more dominant in the same places. The only argument that you can ever make between these 2 players is the only thing that Hakeem does better is defensively. That's it. He's not a better post scorer. He's not a better free throw shooter. He's not a better team elevator. He's not a better floor raiser or ceiling raiser. He is not a better shooter from anywhere on the court. He is only a better defender, and he's a more versatile driver. That's it. Does that one factor alone make him better?
Round 3, Gifted. Your last argument. Keep it hoops, fellas. Let's go.
I find it funny because you must be hard of hearing because I said Jamal Murray in terms of a 3-level score, in terms of volume 3-point shooting. No, Hakeem did not have that. Overall, you mentioned floor creation, right? Carrying the load for your team. Hakeem did it as an offensive and a defensive engine. Jokic is a one-way offensive player. In a vacuum, if you're creating a team, Hakeem, we've seen him, based off his skill set, be able to thrive in those moments. He had an aging Drexler who was not in his prime, so that's very disingenuous for you to bring up. And once again, in the postseason, he won back-to-back years, one of which where he dominated the San Antonio Spurs, who had the MVP in the league. He came back from down 3-1 against the Phoenix Suns. And again, as a player, for you to say he's a better post player is funny because literally Hakeem was the GOAT and the creator of all those things in terms of impact. All of that is what he was able to pass down. Again, if you put Hakeem in a system where they had more shooting, where they had valuable defensive players, where he could play with some very good defensive players, more cases than not, you would find way more equatable championship teams because portability is not just a one-way thing. People always say portability, offense. How about your defensive portability? He is the more portable player when it comes down to both ends of the basketball. This isn't a one-way argument. This is Hakeem versus Jokic as players to be great. And we've seen Hakeem time and time again, winning back-to-back against all odds, beating multiple 60-win teams, having such a high load offensively and defensively to carry, have success. That is why he's the better pick here.
Penn, take us home.
Not that I want to spend my entire time talking about Clyde Drexler, but you're very much underrating Clyde. He was 14th in MVP voting the year he joined Hakeem Olajuwon. You're talking about him like he's washed. He shot 35% from three the year he joined Hakeem. 36%. That was very high volume on nearly 5.6 attempts per game. That's high volume for his era. Clyde was a good shooter. He was a really good shooter. He wasn't Reggie Miller, but neither is Jamal Murray. Now, I know that you've talked about him as a one-dimensional player, but he is not one-dimensional at all, and that's why he's so hard to stop. You cannot double Nikola Jokic. Teams regularly triple teamed Hakeem Olajuwon. Now, why did they triple team him? Is it because he was so good? Yeah, it's partially because he was so good, but it's also because he was a terrible passer. He was an awful passer. You're comparing one of the three greatest passers of all time alongside Michael Jordan and Magic Johnson and Jokic. I would put those three as the greatest passers of all time. You're comparing one of those three to possibly the worst passing superstar of his generation, okay, in Hakeem Olajuwon. Okay, we're talking about 10.9 assists per 100 possessions to 3.4. We're talking about a 36% assist percentage to Hakeem's 12. And by the way, despite this massive disparity in usage and a disparity in terms of responsibilities for creating for others, they're barely separated on turnover percentage between 14% versus 14.9 versus 13%. So despite handling the ball more, Jokic is efficient.
Run the poll. That was it. Round 3, topic 3, Gifted versus Penn, closing out the regular season of the PCL. Fellas in chat, thank you guys so much for joining us. The PCL, the regular season has ended. We are going to the playoffs. Any final words, Gifted, before we head out?
Yeah, I do want to say this though, Penn, on some real talk. I don't have a personal problem with you outside of other, things. I think you do know how to talk about basketball. I disagree with some of your points, but I don't want to make it some deep overall personal thing. I just felt like I had to match energy. So that's what I did. We can talk about other things when you want to. That's fine. But I don't hate you as a person. I just want you to know that. There's no hate there.
Thank you for clearing the air, Gifted. Penn?
I'm glad to not be hated. Cool.
All right, fellas.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your Sundays. Good work today. I'm going to kick you all out of here, and I'm going to talk to the people. Hey, regular season of the PCL. That was dope. It's been so dope so far. Make sure you're tapped in. Turn those notifications on so that when playoffs come, you do not miss it. You do want to be here live. It's okay if you're not, but I promise you don't want to miss these live moments, man. It's special. It's so much fun being able to have you guys all involved in the live chat as well. Make sure you guys vote. Go vote in those comments. We're going to count those up after today so we can figure out what's going on come playoff time. Thank you guys so much for allowing me to take Ron's job for the day. I will happily wear the title of L host today. You guys have been great. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all the things, man. PC Nation, love y'all. Peace.
It's the player choice way. Yeah, them boys don't get it started. The player choice way. Yeah, the player choice way. Come and switch lanes into the player choice way.